Welcome to the Women Trailblazers podcast from the UWSP Women's Center for Equity, Development, and Leadership. Here at UW-Stevens Point, we believe that women thrive when they participate in leadership at all levels of decision-making. This podcast is dedicating to centering women and showcasing the incredible ways we lead together.
Each episode, we explore stories of resilience, innovation, and empowerment. Our third series is part of UWSP's Point Out Loud pilot, and we're thrilled to have you join us. Today, we kick off our journey with the empowering words of Malala. Do not wait for something else to come and speak for you. It's you who can change the world.
Abbey Krumrie is a 2010 graduate of UW-Stevens Point with a Bachelor of Science in Biology and minors in Captive Wildlife and Natural Resources Management. She has devoted her career to the conservation and education of raptors and is the co-founder of the River Valley Raptors. Abbey will speak today on how to break down stereotypes, her experiences banding women together, and mentorship during her time at UW-Stevens Point. Hi, Abbey. Thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. We are so excited to have you here. Why don't you start with telling us a little bit about yourself and a career recap?
I have, like you said, graduated from Stevens Point and had worked with several bird facilities and animal facilities throughout the country before moving back close to my hometown, where my husband and I both started a family as well as our nonprofit, River Valley Raptors. Which has been each year kind of getting bigger and bigger.
Awesome.
Last year, we finished out the year with 125 programs. So,
Congrats. That's awesome.
And and then this is actually our second year working with Raptor Resource Project, trapping golden eagles, which is kind of why I've been a little scattered lately because I've been out in the field every day. But we actually trapped our first eagle of the season yesterday and released her this morning. So
wow.
Great timing. Congratulations. That's so awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
My brain is trying to picture that, but I mean, we don't have to go there, but like, wow, what it must be like to be in the presence of a golden eagle.
Oh yeah, no, it's super cool. And the study is to actually trap an adult pair to see if they migrate together when they leave.
Wow.
And last year, the last week of trapping, we finally caught a male. And this year, we're pretty sure it's the same pair, and we trapped the female yesterday.
Woo!
So
Yay.
if it's the case and this is the same pair, this will be the second ever known pair to have a transmitter on.
Oh my gosh.
So
Wow, that's so cool. How inspiring. Wow. And how many years have you been doing this for?
So this is just my second year. Third year, I guess. 3 years ago, I went out a little bit and trapped.
Okay.
But this would be my second year fully taking on the Buffalo County part of the project. So 3 years ago, they moved up to Buffalo County and had started, and I went out a few times. And then last year, I totally took over and have a team. My friend I used to work with at Reggie, she's from Columbia.
Okay.
She actually flies here and lives with us for a couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
And she traps with me, so we're kind of the team here. So so this is our second year doing that. When I worked at the Eagle Center, we did do golden eagle trapping. So this is the Eagle Center actually started the project, and then they kind of quit the trapping, and then Raptor Resource Project just took it up 3 years ago. So.
Okay. Wow. So cool.
Yeah.
So what was the moment when you realized that this is your passion and this is what you wanted to do?
Honestly, for me, I don't remember this one moment. I liked birds from the time I was little. My mom would tell me, like, I would talk about them when I was really little. I do know at the Eagle Center, I handled my first raptor. It was a bald eagle angel. And I do remember that moment of being like, whoa, like, this is cool handling a raptor.
Yeah.
And then, so I guess you could say that was probably my moment for raptors. But I feel like I still have moments where I'm teaching and you can tell there's a kid in the audience where this might be their moment. The look on their face, you're like, oh, I might be their moment for them. And that I every time I have one of those, it's like a moment for me. So
How special.
I've got my student hat on. I don't know about you, but I just heard you say that you went into your career and you've had this amazing career so far without a moment. And I think so many students feel pressured to have a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for students right now about what do you do when the moment's not coming? How do you how do you handle yourself? How do you
Oh,
choose?
yeah, definitely. So like I said, I was into birds and wildlife growing up. And so my mom actually got me into volunteering with Fish and Wildlife when we went out bird banding. And I thought that was really cool. And it was actually the Fish and Wildlife people who I was like, "Ooh, where'd you go to college?" And they're like, "Oh, I went to Stevens Point." And I was like, "Okay, I'm applying for Stevens Point." But the wildlife field in terms of like research, I was taking the natural resources classes and they were wonderful, but that really wasn't where I wanted to go. I actually wanted to be a zookeeper. In fact, in fourth grade, you had to make a star that said like what you wanted to be, and I put zookeeper on it. I remember my sister making fun of me for wanting to be a zookeeper in fourth grade, but it was doing my internship at the Eagle Center that was like, oh, education. Okay, this is interesting, and of course, Shelley Dubé's wildlife 321 and 322 classes, those really kind of pushed me towards that captive animal way to go. So for people who haven't had that moment, volunteer, intern, it's those experiences that are going to be like, yes, this is what I want to do, or no, this isn't. I did my zookeeping internships and I liked it. And I think if I'd done that first, I would have been like, yeah, I do want to be a zookeeper. But it was those education internships where I was like, oh, no, this is where I want to go. Like, I don't mind animal husbandry, but it's inspiring kids to continue on. That really makes me feel passionate.
So many great themes there. So I heard you say, don't get stuck on the badges you wear, right? I said I was going to be a zookeeper, right? I also heard you say that keep going no matter who makes fun of you, right? Yeah. It doesn't matter. Even if it's sis who you really love, keep going. Well, that's great. And I loved that you mentioned people that you talked to about where they learned, and you flagged UWSP, but even more importantly, you flagged an amazing educator here, Shelley Dubé. That's awesome. So it's that mentorship thing, right? Of how our educators show up as mentors.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It definitely helped.
And like Lena said, I'm also wearing my student hat, and I can definitely relate when you said those internships and those opportunities, and it's all about those connections that help you to figure out where your direction really lies. And I'm curious, can you share how your various roles at UW-Stevens Point shaped your career and prepared you for where you are right now?
Learning the classes and getting the information was huge at Stevens Point. I did some work with the Women in Natural Resources. And so I did some volunteer. I think we went up to like Northwoods Wildlife and did some volunteering with rehab up there. And then the big thing being that internship requirement again was huge. I'm so happy that it was a requirement. Because in college you're like, oh, do I really want to do an internship? So all of that being at Stevens Point, and that was all huge in developing what I am now. And then actually that's how I got involved with Reggie, Raptor Education Group. Okay. After I did my internship at the Eagle Center, I think it was Bob Rosenfield's Raptor Ecology class I was taking, and one of Reggie's interns was taking the class with me. And so we were chatting, and she's like, oh, I interned at Reggie and I still volunteer. Like, you should come with me. And I was like, oh, yeah, I would love to. I have Raptor experience. And then, of course, that's when I met Marge. And sure enough, I go and I'm the director of education there, shortly after for 4 years we were there. So all of that stuff is, everything, all those connections you make at college through, interns and teachers and classmates and whatnot. And actually I joined the sorority while I was at Stevens Point. I was in Gamma Phi Delta. And just last week, I haven't talked to too many of my sorority sisters. And just last week I had one of them message me out of the nowhere, and she's like, hey, I see you work with raptors and my kid loves owls. Like, can we talk about, setting something up? And I was like, yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
so cool.
I love that, and it's just giving me this picture, like, why do students choose a campus in the middle of rural America, right? And it's because of what you're talking,
Exactly.
and it's about the way we're connected with each other.
Yeah. Oh, very much so. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Listeners, you don't know this. I've been telling everybody in the room here because I'm very proud of it. I am a student of Abby's. I attended her Raptor Education course because I was thinking about being a falconer. Abby helped me understand the full-on responsibility in that, and I think what I'll do now is I think I'll become, maybe in the next 5 to 7 years, a volunteer at Reggie, because I came to understand through Abby's dedication to her work that I wasn't going to be fully capable of taking care of a raptor the way they needed. But being her student, and you can hear her passion, I know you can in her voice.
Absolutely.
Being her student made me want to do what she's talking about, which is have a bias for action and get out and do something. So thank you for that, Abby.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me know that. I love that.
Yeah.
A lot of great insights here. Speaking of insights, what would you say is your most significant takeaway from your internship you were just talking about?
My most significant takeaway from my internship at the Eagle Center was my husband. We both
Literally.
we met working there,
That's right.
and so that was great. But no, it was developing that passion, not just for Raptors, but for the education. And Scott Mayhoose, he's still the director of education there. He is one of the most wonderful presenters I have ever seen present on anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned how to present based on how he did it. And I mean, to the point where, you can see other people and you're like, oh, you just don't have that passion like Scott has. And so he really developed how to present to people and showed me, how to be enthusiastic and whatnot. So being the presenter I am today, I would definitely say was from the Eagle Center, and specifically Scott from that.
I have detected a theme, though. I just want to call it out. We've gone from eagle couples at the beginning of the podcast to now we're on to human couples. I just want to call that out. Interesting connection. But it does talk about your bias for action. I love the way you take action, Abby, and the way you talk about that. What's it like as a woman to have a bias for action?
Yeah. I have been really lucky where I have been to not have seen some of the biases that I know a lot of women get. Maybe more so in the falconry world. I've seen it more. You've got a lot of these old men falconers, and then, being married to a falconer, I feel like when I first joined the falconry group, I was the falconer's wife. I wasn't my own falconer, and it wasn't until people were out hunting with us and seeing me handle the birds and hunt the bird where they're like, oh, okay, yeah, she's a falconer too, I guess. But, on the other side of things, I have had my children with me for a lot of my programs, usually someone with me to help, so that if the kid gets loud, it doesn't affect the program. But I've actually had more than one occasion where other moms will come up to me and just say, it's really great to see you bring your kids and to normalize having your kids at work with you, so that your kid, you don't have to give up your passion because you're a mom and because you can still work and do what you love. And that was a big thing when Joe and I decided to have kids was, you have to change your life somewhat to have kids. It's you can't say you can't, but we really wanted our kids to become part of our lives. We wanted them to be fully immersed into what we were doing. So I've been really lucky that I've had women be able to see that and get a lot of positive feedback and not as much of the negative where I'm at, which has been wonderful.
In those 125 programs that you talked about doing last year in your nonprofit, how many of them do you think your kids were at?
Well, our intern backed out on us for the first time at the end of April. Ooh. And, which wasn't too big a deal. I was like, I can do the programs. I'm like, that's a bummer. I have this little Kestrel. I love to fly the Kestrel at programs. You probably know the Kestrel.
I do know the Kestrel, yeah.
Oh, yeah. She loved it. And I was like, you know what? I said to my daughter, I'm like, you want to do programs with me this summer? So she came to every program, I think, except one this summer, and flew the Kestrel with me.
That's right.
And she's the first person to get paid by River Valley Raptors. She got $5 a program to pay for her trip to Disney World this summer. Probably half, but not, she actually did those programs with me. The rest of the programs were usually like it was, like this last Saturday we were at Kickapoo Valley Reserve, and it was an outdoor winter festival.
Okay.
So it was fun to take, Lila with, and, she got to run around and do the festival while we did the program.
Yeah.
So, so my 2-year-old's a little more crazy. So, now that he doesn't sit on my back anymore, he's been coming to a lot less and doing daycare.
Yeah.
But, yeah, probably still close to half of the programs they were with us.
I am so impressed with that role modeling. Thank you for giving us a picture of what a mom looks like today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A woman who wears lots of hats, that's for sure.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm curious, being a woman in this field, what has been the biggest challenge with all of these stereotypes and wearing all these hats, and especially transitioning into being a mom? What would you say is your biggest challenge with that?
Yeah, well, I think a big thing, at least in the beginning of being a mom, was that, with both my kids, the whole breastfeeding thing, it was harder in the first year and, first 2 years, but especially that first year, to be able to leave the kid with dad. So that was a part of why the kids would have to come with me. And so, having to be the mom that's with them all the time and that main sort of support in the beginning, was really the hardest. And, and you're expected, you're expected to be with your kids and not necessarily, leaving them with grandparents or babysitters all the time. Now Joe's a huge help and is great at taking the kids, but him being a falconer and wanting to do programs as well also made it hard because he wants to come do both things as well. So I think that was hard too, was I was always kind of the one who had to stay home with the kids if we both wanted to do something bird related.
That sounds like things I've experienced as well. So I can really appreciate what you're saying about how you face those challenges. Thanks for sharing that.
And I've noticed this common theme as we've been talking to a lot of UWSP alumni, and there's a common theme about the connections at UWSP and the impact of the connections. And I'm wondering, you found a lot of important people in your life from what you've experienced for sure. I'm curious how mentorship has played a role in all of that for you.
Oh, yeah, huge. I mean, I think about Stevens Point and my time there all the time, and I couldn't be where I was today without having gone to Stevens Point. Mentors through either, Shelly, of course, she's the one who, Joe always had this idea that we could go teach this Raptor class at Stevens Point. And I used to laugh at him, like, who's going to let us teach a college class? He's like, no, I think we should do it. And, and he messaged Shelly Dubé and said, here's my idea and here's what I want to do. And she was on board with it and she helped us develop it. And it's just the coolest thing in our career to be able to go on this professional level and teach about something that we love. And so that was huge. And then, of course, Marge Gibson, is a mentor, and we met her through Stevens Point because through Shelly's class, we got to go and volunteer there. And that's how I met, through Bob Rosenfield's class.
Yeah.
I got to meet someone there. And then he, of course, is a mentor. I still tell people today about the video he showed us in class where he grabs the Cooper's hawk out of midair.
Wow.
You haven't gotten to see this video?
I don't remember this video. He grabs it out of air?
Oh, yeah. He's like climbing into the nest and the Cooper's hawk comes by and he just reaches up and grabs it.
Wow. Yeah, we got to see this video. We're going to try to include a link if we can because that sounds amazing.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
So throughout your career, you've been through, organizations and all this. What specifically motivated you to establish River Valley Raptors, and how has it evolved over the time that it's had?
Yeah, well, I think our biggest thing was a couple different things. I grew up in Winona, right in the Driftless area, beautiful area, but I thought I would never move back home. Like, I left and I was like, I have to leave. I can't move home. But then it wasn't until I think my sophomore year, I was bringing my roommate and her friend home, and we come into Winona and like, wow, it's really pretty here. And I was like, oh, you're right. It really is pretty with the bluffs and the river. And, then I lived in, Stevens Point's flat, and then Antigo was very flat. I went down to Florida. It was very flat. And so that gave me this love of the Driftless area. And, when Joe and I were talking about having a family, we both thought, we love the Driftless area, and that's where we want to end up. And then his parents are still in Mondovi. My parents are still in Winona. So when it was like, okay, we're going to have kids, we need to be close to grandparents because we couldn't do what we did without them. We want to go hunting. We want to go to programs, and we can't take the kids. They go to either one of our grandparents' houses and they watch the kids for us. And I also have 2 sisters that are in Winona with kids. So having that family help has been phenomenal. We could not do it without our family. So moving back, even though we are close to the Eagle Center, as much as I love bald eagles, I love all the raptors. And so I really wanted to start River Valley Raptors so that we could have more than just the eagles to work with. And then as we started to go, we're big in the International Association of Avian Trainers and Educators, big bird organization. And it really taught us the ways that we should be working with birds to make sure that they have the best quality of lives possible. So having my own birds allowed me to really make the choices I felt were in the best interest of the bird. So rather than working for somebody else, I could make those decisions on how to train them, and how to work with them. And that was really important to me when we started our organization. So, so all those reasons kind of came together. And, originally it was supposed to just be this little hobby of like 4 birds. And then every program we went to, without even advertising, we'd get 1 or 2 people that would want to book another program from that program. And now we have 14 Raptors and over 100 programs a year. So.
Yeah, so 14 Raptors. So I'm just trying to think about what that looks like at your home and your house, and I'm also blending that with quality of life. So how do you mix quality of life for these amazing birds and quality of life for you and your family?
So 2 of those birds are on a propagation permit, our little saw-whet owls. So they only get checked on twice a year for medical reasons. Otherwise, they want to be left alone. That's their preference. So that takes out 2 of them. And then we do have a couple of birds that are now considered retired. So they can still do programs if they want, but their kind of role now is to sort of live out their life in a kind of peaceful, happy. The one she still likes to come out on programs. So we still take her, but, so that kind of brings us to this more core birds that really need to be used the most. And, a couple of those, that need that more attention are burrowing owls. She of course lives in the house with us because she needs that constant attention.
Yeah.
But that makes it a lot easier where we can work with the other birds during the day and come to the evening and we just open the door, let her out, and she gets her social time in the evening. So, luckily our children love birds. And so my daughter, like I said, she flies the Kestrel for us. We're getting Cyrus ready for this weekend's program. So yesterday, she was homesick from school. So yesterday I was like, well, Lila, I got to do the Kestrel. You want to fly with me? She's like, yeah. So, the kids helping do it. And then the fact that Joe is both a falconer and a bird trainer like me makes it so much easier because one of us can deal with work with the kids, be with the kids. One of us can be with the birds. And so being able to split that, especially when I used to work a full-time job and he worked a full-time job, we would come home in the evening with our falconry birds and we'd take turns. All right, you go do the birds, honey. I'm going to go take care of the kids and vice versa. Now I'm home during the day with them. So I can pretty much work with the birds all day.
Yeah.
That's made it a lot easier, but.
I love that you mentioned Lila because she's been on my heart for our whole conversation here. And I keep trying to think what it's like to be Lila, right? She's got an owl in her house. She's got a mom she gets not only to go to work with, but she actually got her first job in her mom and dad's nonprofit. What do you think, or what do you hear from Lila about her experience as being a girl and hanging out with a woman like you?
Right now she's like, this is normal, right? Like, this is just life. No, actually, this year she doesn't have show and tell anymore because she's a first grader. But the last 2 years she's had show and tell, and of course wanted to bring in a bird, for one of her show and tells. And it's really cool. I will let her take over, and she will get up in front of her class, and she will essentially give a presentation, and it's pretty cool to just watch her do that. I'm like, wow, like you listen more than I thought. I didn't think you were paying attention during my programs.
I love that.
And so it's cool to see.
And I just want to say right now, and thanks for letting me do this, everyone. This is a chance for you to ask us and ask the listeners for any help you need for your nonprofit. So just remind us again the name of the nonprofit and what's a call to action that you want to call pointers to.
Our biggest thing, of course, is funding, as with all organizations. And so, we're just trying to figure out grant writing right now. Right now I focus so much on the birds and the programs that I really don't have time to sit down and really focus on those grants and stuff like that. So any help that, people have with finding more funding, of course. I don't pay myself yet. But our goal is to eventually have this be my full-time job, and we want to build a center in La Crosse. And so that's our biggest thing when we go to programs is we talk to people about, if you know any land in La Crosse, and we kind of have a fun little spiel for people. So, yeah.
Yeah. So listeners, if there's any way that you can be helpful to your fellow pointer, reach out.
I love that. So you're inspiring future generations not only as a role model, but directly through your own daughter. I think that's so special. I love that. And Lena and I like to circle back, and we like to have a theme and talk about hope. And we're curious, when you think about women and our role in our society, what gives you the most hope?
Yeah, just the fact that I see more and more women in this field, and I am out there with them. We got to be breaking down these stereotypes, and I have two very good falconer friends, both women. One of them is a mom just like me, and she got a lot more crap from males in the falconry world, about, oh, you're only a good falconer because you're a stay-at-home mom, so all you get to do is hunt all day, and just here's a lot of stuff like that, and women banding together and supporting each other, and these two women, they have supported me so much in my falconry career, and I think we just need to remember that as women, that the more we support each other, the more we're going to break down stereotypes from people that are trying to tear women down.
So can you think about a time when you've heard of other women in your field being torn down, or when maybe you've witnessed it, and how do we turn from those moments towards hope? Do you have any advice for us?
Yeah, our biggest thing, especially with kind of the incident I just told you about, was just, we kind of just talked about it and said, we just need to keep doing what we're doing, and they will see that, you can say what you want, but we're going to keep going out there, and we're going to keep showing how good we are at this. And, you can say as much as you want, but I think it's doing and showing that you're doing it is what's going to turn people's opinions and be like, you can only say so much, but here's right here the proof that, that we're able to do this.
Yeah. So get in the field, show up. Can you tell our listeners, because I've been in the field with you, right? Because I was in your class, but people don't understand what you're talking about with being in the field. Like, give us just a small description about what a falconer in the field does. What do you mean when you say get in the field?
So for falconry specifically, we are showing up at a kind of wooded area, usually not super big like a deer hunting area, more a small area where there's a lot of rabbits, and we pull out the bird, take off the equipment, send them up into a tree, and I always joke that it's kind of like the opposite of hunting with a dog when you're pheasant hunting. Like, you're essentially the dog, and you're kicking up rabbits and squirrels. You're walking through making noise, and the bird is following you, and hopefully when you kick up that rabbit, that bird will come down and catch that rabbit for you.
Okay, listeners,
so, or in the case of what case of what you guys saw, there's us throwing sticks at trees, making all sorts of goofy noise, trying to get a squirrel to move.
All right, listeners, I want to give you a little bit of a different view because I want you to see what a baddie Abbey is and what a baddie a woman falconer is, okay? So you've got on shoes and you're walking out over terrain that isn't even. Let's start there. And you're thinking about this bird you're with and you're thinking about what the bird's going to do, right? And so you've got this gear and this equipment with you and you're walking out there and you're paying attention to the whole environment while you walk, okay? I don't know about you, but I'm an in my head kind of girl. In my head, in my heart, I'm looking at the ground and thinking about what we have to do when we get there. I was disoriented, Abbey. It wasn't easy for me to show up in the field and you're carrying everything, right? And I'm looking at you thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to have a glove on my hand and I'm going to have to carry the Raptor. Mm-hmm. And there's this thing, we put jesses on the animal. Tell me if I get the terms wrong, right? And so we get out there and oh my gosh, folks, you know, it's one thing to see a bird from afar. It is a whole nother thing. Abbey, you are a baddie because I saw you do this over and over again. You interact with this powerful creature that's like right there. Mm-hmm. You can feel the heat of them. You can see that they're predators. Like they got something to do here and they're ready to get to work. And so you are the dog. I felt like a dog. I felt like a dog that wasn't that smart. And you're orchestrating all of that. So, you know, I loved what you said. And the reason I elaborated on all of this is because it doesn't matter what industry you want to work in, what work you want to do. Be like Abbey. Go out and walk the terrain. Be like a falconer. Like, get in the tough stuff. Be insecure. Have uneven footing. Carry the load. Be a baddie like Abbey.
I love that. Be a baddie like Abbey.
That was a great way to put it. That was awesome.
That is wonderful. And Abbey, before we wrap up today, what's one thing you'd like to ask everyone listening to this podcast to do to further unleash women?
Yeah, like I said, we need to continue to break down those stereotypes and be there for each other. And so, you know, I think if women can support each other and stick up for each other and just keep showing up, whether it's in the field or in the office or wherever you are, we just need to keep showing up and keep proving that we're doing it.
I love that. Thank you so much, Abbey, for being here today.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me.
We're so happy. We were thinking about you for a while, so I'm so happy that this worked out. Thank you.
Yeah, me too. Thanks.
I've got this line running through my head. I think you're gonna be in my head for a long time, but it says something like this. It goes like this: my body proves that I'm in the game, right?
I like that.
That's beautiful.
That's wonderful.
It's yummy. Thank you, Abbey.
That's a wrap on this episode of Series 3, Episode 2. A big thank you to Abbey Krumrie for sharing her journey and the transformative work she's leading with the River Valley Raptors. If you loved this episode, subscribe and share it to spread the message of empowering future leaders in natural resources and beyond. Thank you for joining us on the Women Trailblazers podcast. We hope these conversations inspire you to take action in your own life and community.
Remember, Brené Brown said, courage starts with showing up and letting ourselves be seen.
Stay tuned for our next episode where we'll continue to uplift the voices and stories of women trailblazers.
Until then, keep leading, keep thriving, and keep making a difference.